Hey there, I'm Sean Finnegan, and you are listening to Restitutio, a podcast that seeks to recover authentic Christianity and live it out today. Jeremy Martin is a complicated man. Although raised in a Christian home, he chose a different path. At 18 years old, he embraced the party lifestyle of drinking alcohol and using drugs of various kinds. Before long, he found himself sucked into a criminal lifestyle, including an 8-year stretch where he earned his living from crime. At 25, he had to flee Arizona in order to escape murder. Now, at this point in the story, I bet you're expecting me to say something like, "Then Jeremy met God and changed his life and has been faithfully serving him ever since." Nope, that's not how the story goes. It's way more complicated than that. I'll have to let him explain it. Rest assured, though, you're in for a treat. Jeremy shows us that God doesn't quit on people, even if people quit on him. He shows us that it's never too late to start serving God. And he shows us that true satisfaction isn't found in distractions like marijuana and video games, but in doing good for others. Here now is episode 666. I quit weed and video games to serve God with Jeremy Martin. Today with me is Jeremy Martin. I'm really excited to talk to you today, Jeremy. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you. I'm very excited and honored to be here, Sean.
So let's start with your childhood. What was it like growing up in the home that you grew up in with your parents and your sibling? And let's start there, and then we'll kind of make our way through your journey of faith.
Absolutely. No, my parents were great folks. Most of you have probably heard of them, Joe and Rebecca Martin. They're just really good people. They're good Christian, grounded, deeply honest, faithful people. And I grew up with them my whole life. At the beginning of my life, you could say I had a drug problem because I was drugged to church every Sunday. But it was honestly there was no issues. Any of the faults that came later in my life, I certainly can't point at anybody but myself, because they did a fantastic job raising me. They took me to church. We talked deeply about our faith and stuff like that. And they were good parents. I had a good family. I had a good upbringing. I was never hungry. The lights were always on. I had no complaints.
What states did you grow up in? Where did you live?
Well, I started in Louisiana because my mom and dad were from Pumpkin Center, Louisiana, as he'll be happy to tell you often. And we moved around a bit because he was a pastor. And so we moved out to Arizona and then California and then back to Arizona and kind of all over the place. We were in Virginia for a little bit.
Okay. And you are in Tennessee now?
I am.
Okay.
I am in Tennessee.
Right. And you've been there for quite some time?
Work. Yes, at least 20 years now.
Okay. So that's where you landed, but you started out kind of going from state to state as your dad would pastor one church and then another.
Right.
So what was it like when you came to an age where you could make your own decisions and you didn't have to go to church if you didn't want to? Tell me about that part of your life.
I started leaning pretty heavily into my own understanding. And I've been writing devotionals for Seek, Grow, Love. And if you go back through the history of it and just type in my name, you can see kind of my journey, because I've been very open about it. But I started to be very rebellious. As soon as I turned 18, I thought I had complete autonomy, even though mom and dad were still paying all the bills and had bought my car and were paying for my insurance and all that stuff. I was an adult now.
Okay.
And I started making my own decisions, and I started making poor decisions. And eventually got to the point where I was just not a good kid. I was a bad guy. I was a career criminal for probably about 8 years.
Was
And yeah, it was a pretty hard.
What does that mean, a career criminal?
Well, it was deceptively smooth transition, honestly, from an innocent, naive kid into this just world of hooligans and debauchery. I started smoking pot and drinking probably 15 or 16. And by the time I was 18, I was hanging out with people that did that kind of thing also.
Okay.
So I was still selling pot on the side to support my pot habit, and I kind of moved into heavier drugs. And the more I got into that environment, the farther away from God I got, and of course, the deeper into that lifestyle I got, till it got to the point where I was hanging out with some really bad people doing really bad
What do
stuff.
you think drew you to that? Because it's not like you were getting beaten at home or had some sort of like something to run away from.
Yeah, no,
What drew
I
you
had
into that?
they were fine for me at the house. I think honestly it was the allure of the naughtiness initially, and it's I get to do what I want, and I'm an adult and I can do this. And it was kind of fun for a little bit, and then I started doing stuff and it was getting a little risky, and I got kind of an adrenaline rush from doing some of the risky things that we were doing, and it just got worse and worse and worse.
Mm.
I guess to the same reason people jump off a perfectly good airplane with a parachute. You get a thrill doing it for a moment, and then you don't realize, hey, there's a ground beneath you, and it's coming up pretty rapidly.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So you were looking for excitement. You were looking for adventure. You were looking for, I guess, feeling alive.
I,
Um,
I was, and I'll also say that it was the easy way to make money. And once I was making decent money, and I was doing fairly well in my chosen branches of that occupation.
uh-huh.
Once you start taking the easy path, it's easier to keep going down the easy path, and it was just a lot easier. I mean, like, why get a job? Jobs are for suckers. So I got this going on.
Hmm.
And so it was a combination of the financial rewards and also the thrill, honestly.
And when was this? When you were about 18, 19? What year was that? Like, so
Oh,
people
geez.
get a perspective on it.
Uh,
Well, when did you
I
when
I
did you graduate
graduated
high school? I guess.
86. I had to think back for a moment. I graduated in
It's
86.
so long
So
ago.
yeah,
All right, so this is
that's
late
true.
80s. In what state are
Early 90s.
you at this
Yeah,
time?
Arizona. We were in
Okay.
Arizona at the time.
So Arizona, late 80s, across the United States, there was a lot of drugs coming in really for the first time. A lot of cocaine
Yes.
use and other
Yep.
drugs. You were into that lifestyle, into the party lifestyle, into crime for pay. And
Yep.
were you still living at home or were you able to make enough to move out?
Oh no. When I was 18, my father and I had a very an intense fellowship conversation
I could just
where I
imagine what
think
that was like because you guys are both pretty
yeah,
intense.
we can be. But no, I think I'd come home about 1 or 2 in the morning, and obviously probably inebriated, and he was in my face going, "Listen, when you're living in my house, you're going to abide by my rules, and this is not going to cut it, mister." And I said, "Well, listen, I'm 18. I'm an adult. I can do whatever I want." And we just kind of butted heads for a second, and I think I moved out like the next day.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was able to. I had the financial wherewithal, and I stayed gone for about 8 years. And every now and then we would see each other, and we were still amicable. We didn't we but I was clearly off on left field, and he was clearly off in the other direction.
And is your sister
Um,
younger than you or older?
yes, she's 4 years younger.
Okay.
4 years
So
younger.
he probably had a concern about how your lifestyle would affect her.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
No, there was all kinds of layers to it, socially and emotionally, but no. And I moved from the drugs to doing some light breaking into entering, and then doing other stuffs, and it was just a bad scene.
Okay. So that would characterize that whole 8-year period.
Yes, and with the progressively getting worse, worse and worse and worse, and the more you're in that lifestyle, the more of those people that you get to know, and the more that becomes
Hmm.
your
And
lifestyle.
what did you look
And
like in those days? Paint us
I
a picture so we can imagine what
was
young Jeremy looked
I
like.
was a I was a scrawny punk with a mohawk that was probably about down to about the middle of my back.
A
So
mohawk, huh?
a mohawk. I actually when I got out of that lifestyle, I went to from immediately hard stop from that lifestyle to the Bible college. There's a story there, obviously, but I think I was the only kid that ever went to the Bible college with the mohawk, and I didn't have it spiked up or anything, but I did have an interesting haircut for a Bible college student.
Yeah, yeah. Did you have a regular car? Were you driving a motorcycle, or what else? Did
I had a regular car for a while. It would change occasionally, and that was also one of the things that we were doing. So I would have a number of different cars on a number of different days.
Okay, yeah,
So
right. And so you mentioned about going down to the Bible college. That doesn't seem to fit with the story. So what? Tell us about what
no,
happened there.
no. Well, it's funny because some folks, like usually the more intelligent, less stubborn people, some folks, God will gently guide them into the path that they should take, and they
Okay.
walk that way, and they're happy. And some people he grabs by the throat and the short hairs and picks them up and places him where he wants them. And that was in my case. It Through the course of my misadventures, I kind of I got involved with some people that I should not have been involved with, and I came to know some stuff that I should not know, and it got dangerous. It got dangerous to where my life was actually uh, very much threatened. So I was probably going to die. In fact, I was going to die.
And how old were you?
And
You're in your
so
mid-20s at this point?
I'm about 25, right
Okay.
at 25,
And
and there.
just the situation you were involved in was such that you were like, I am a target. My life is in danger. I need to do something
Yes,
drastic to survive.
yes, and that was the case. That was the case. I called mom and dad desperate. I was in a desperate situation. I called mom and dad and I said, "Listen, I'm not going to make it. There's some bad things going on, and I can't give you all the details." And I still couldn't because it's beyond more than just myself. But there was some bad stuff going on, and I needed to get out. There's a guy that had canceled his plane ticket, and they sent me that plane ticket in his name, and I was out in 24 hours, and I flew to Atlanta. And they
Okay.
said the condition is you can't uh, any of that stuff you've been doing, you can't do that, obviously. You need to come down here, and we would like you to go to the Bible college. I said, okay.
All
So
right.
I
So
went down.
go ahead.
I went down to Atlanta, and honestly, I was expecting any day to die because I knew that they were coming after me. I knew that there were some bad things going on. I was expecting any day to die. And I kept getting like little subtle messages from unexpected people in unexpected places, is just saying, "Hey, we haven't forgot about you, friend. We're gonna have a talk real soon." So I buried myself in the Bible, looking for an out. And of course, obviously, by our discussion here, God gave me one.
Hmm. Yeah. Can you give any more detail on why they wanted to kill you? Or is it
Um,
still a live
I,
issue
I
that you wouldn't want to reveal?
it's there's no statute of limitations on some of that stuff. So there's some stuff that I wouldn't want to reveal, but I will say I just found out some information that I shouldn't have, and it put me in great risk.
Okay. All right. All right. So you tucked tail and ran down to the Bible college. This is
Absolutely, pulled a rabbit.
this is a major crisis in your life. The biggest crisis you could possibly face, where your life is threatened, where you feel like you need to preserve your own life. You get down to the Bible college and you move back in with your parents. Is that true?
Yes, yes, I pretty much that was my option. I had no other options except to be homeless on the street.
Okay. And you started attending the Atlanta Bible College. And what was it like for you? It was a joyful experience, or it was misery, or what was it like?
It was different. Let's put it that way. It was extremely different. Kent Ross asked me that in my first week. I don't know if you remember Kent. Kent was a
I do,
great
yeah.
fella. He reminded me of Friar Tuck. I love Kent Ross. He was such a good guy. Um,
Fire talk.
but he came up to me one time and he kind of looked at me sideways. He was like, "How you doing, Jeremy? How you feeling?" And I kind of looked around, and I'm with all these wholesome kids who are just awesome people who are studying God and good Christian brothers and sisters, and then there's me, and I know I'm a terrible person. I've done terrible things. I have a very painfully full understanding of my own depravity. I kind of looked at Kent and I said, Kent, I don't know, man. It's really weird. I feel like a wolf among sheep.
Wow.
He just kind of laughed and he patted me on the shoulder and said, it'll get better. It'll get better. And it did.
Hmm. And
Um,
that's when you still had the
but no,
mohawk when he came up to you.
yes, yes. I had the mohawk for probably the first year I was in the Bible college,
Wow.
or longer. But no, if you know Andy Cisneros, ask Andy Cisneros, because he was there when I first got there, and I kind of walked in with an overcoat, and I'm very on edge, and I'm used to, I was scrappy as a young lad, so I was used to scrapping a lot, and that's probably one of the things that kept me alive because it came to that point on a couple occasions before I left. But when I met Andy Cisneros the very first time in the lobby of the Bible college, he said, "Hey, I'm Andy," and he flipped out his hand real quick, and I put him on the ground because I just
You thought he
you
was.
ask him, yeah, well, he just moved a little too quickly around me. You know?
I could totally see Andy doing that too. He's so outgoing and friendly.
Andy's
Um,
awesome. I love Andy to
I
death.
wonder how did he respond to that? Was he just like, "What in the
He
world
was
is
just
wrong
kind of
with
like,
you?"
"Whoa, yeah, yeah." Yeah, no, super good people. And again, I was a wolf among sheep at the time because I had been living that lifestyle. It was an abrupt transition, I
Hmm.
guess you could say, quite
Okay.
abrupt.
So when you were there, you were studying. Your dad was teaching there at that time, or no?
He was, he
Okay.
was. I actually had a couple of his classes. I took him for Old Testament and Hebrew,
Okay. Like Hebrew language or the Book of Hebrews?
Hebrew language,
Oh, okay.
Hebrew language. I had he was one of my instructors. Kent Ross was one of my instructors. Sir Anthony Buzzard was one of my instructors. Great group of Dale Ramsey, David Krogh, great group of people. Really good people that were very understanding of my foolishness. They were much more gracious to me than I deserved.
Okay. Very good. So then what happened next?
Well, I think it was about 2 years into the Bible college. I started feeling weird. I was getting deeply scriptural. I was getting deeply spiritual, which is uh, as or more important, I think. And at the time, I started feeling weird about because I saw the end of my career path here. I was 2 years into the Bible college. I basically had just short of my associates, and I was like, well, the path for this is to become a pastor. And I felt weird about, particularly considering my depravity and the awesomeness of the people around me. I felt really weird about accepting a paycheck to do what we should all be doing anyway. And I saw that at the end of my college career. So I went into just regular business. I started working a real job and pursuing that, um, as opposed to pursuing my bachelor's at the Bible college.
Okay. And so this is now moving forward into the 90s, into the late 90s.
Yep, yep.
And because I know I came across you and your wife and at least one or two of your kids around 2003.
Yeah.
And you were working some other job, but I'd see you once in a while on Sundays at Kent Ross's church, I think.
Yep.
What was that?
New Friends
No,
Bible Church.
New
Oh no,
Friends Bible
Simple Teaching.
Church. Yeah, New Friends Bible Church. Yeah. So, is that about where you were at that time? Like you had done your 2 years and you were just working a typical job.
Yeah, typical
Found a
job. Got
wife,
got the
had kids.
got the wife and 1.2 kids. Working on just doing the American dream. We were working on buying a house at the time. And we actually did buy our first house in Atlanta. I don't know if we had bought it when I had first met you or not, but
Okay.
yeah, I was just basically pursuing a job in the secular community, and I wasn't really doing anything wrong. But I got to started to focus more on taking care of my family, more on, hey, I got to get some more income and stuff. I did it all legitimately, but I started to lose focus on the scripture, and I started to kind of uh, be less intense with my focus on God.
Okay. So, what? How would you characterize those years when you were living in the Atlanta area and you're working a job and you were married, you had the first couple of kids? would you say that you were pretty happy or content, or
Yeah,
you were like stressed out, or like how would you characterize it?
a little bit of both. It's just like everybody who's trying to raise a family. I was always in the back of my head, I was cognizant of the fact that I'm alive through a miracle. And I was absolutely alive through a miracle. So I always had that appreciation in the back of my head. But I also started to just be like, oh man, I got the rent due. I got to pay for this. And the
Hmm.
kid needs braces. Got to do this.
Yeah.
So I started to lose focus on and kind of immerse myself in the man stuff. In our society, there's things that a man has to do to provide for the family, and I just started to get immersed in those.
Okay.
And you know, and honestly, after a while, it seemed like I was immersed in those things, and I was trying to do those things, and I was doing a good job as a provider. And I was still holding the faith, but I think gradually over a long period of time, and this is you know over a decade or so, it was over quite a while. I just started to look back to some of the things I was doing, particularly smoking pot and drinking a lot, with kind of a wistful longing, I guess you could
Okay.
say,
So take
which
us
was a mistake.
to what happened next.
Well, it's there nothing really bad happened after that. I mean, I was working, providing for the family. I think I was still making, for the most part, good decisions. I remember one time when we had a choice between paying the Visa bill or the tithe. We paid the tithe, and then unexpectedly got a check that covered the exact amount that we needed for the Visa bill
Wow.
later. Yeah, it's all kinds of stuff like that. So it's really hard to summarize an existence in a few sentences. But I did notice after a while, I started really thinking, well, I'm not going to do any of this other stuff that I used to do, because I used to do a lot of hard drugs too. But surely it wouldn't be too bad if I just, had a couple beers with the fellas after work, and maybe went and just had, smoked a little more pot, and that would be fine.
So you were
Um,
pretty much straight edge for years.
years,
And
years and
then you
years and years.
said, well, maybe we could just do a little bit.
Yeah, maybe I'll
And
just let this little bit back in.
yeah, and how did that go for you?
Terribly. It's like being a little pregnant. It's like being a little pregnant. No, the thing is, I never went back to like I was before. I can say with complete honesty, I never was once breaking into stores and or businesses or cracking safes or any of that stuff. No, not stealing cars. None of the stuff that was going on before. But I did find myself slowly drifting away from God. Just not so much as you'd notice it in a day, or even maybe a month, or even a year. But when you stand at the end of 10 years and you look back and you're like, I've gotten pretty far off course here, you know. I I became what I consider to be a Christian in name only. See, no, a Christian in name only. I'd still go to church every Sunday. Check, you know, I'd still I still knew where my Bible was. It was right there on the table, with a nice
Right.
layer of dust on it. I would still pray every time we sat down to eat. But as far as like a relationship with God and that deep seeking that I had when I had first was in fear for my life and asking God to save me, it just kind of drifted away,
Hmm.
farther and farther away.
If
Um,
if you could go back and talk to yourself during that phase, what would you even say to yourself to like give yourself advice?
ah, I would probably have to slap myself first because I'm stubborn and ignorant. Yes, first thing, smack. Listen, um, don't be dumb. You're being stupid right now. God saved you for a reason, and this is not being respectful of the amount of effort that was went to bring you to redemption.
Mhm.
You were bought at a price that was a very high price that you couldn't afford to pay in the first place. So this is just disrespectful.
Do you think you just didn't really have a way to serve God that was meaningful? Like you were going to church, right? But
Yeah, I was
that's
going to
not
church, and
that wasn't
it's
enough.
not doing that's not it wasn't enough. And the problem was when I was going to the Bible college, I was there were some awesome guys there, Mike Sisler and Ryan Smith, and we would go out sometimes and feed the homeless and just have this great big spiritual rush. And but I didn't do that consistently. And after a while, it just kind of started dropping off, and I'd just go to church, and then I'd play the bass in church. Hey, look, I'm serving, and then just gradually drifted,
Wow.
um, and to the point where I wasn't openly rebellious towards God, but I also wasn't actively seeking Him with my whole heart, and
Yeah.
that's the difference. I really that is 100% the difference. You got to actively seek God with your whole heart, because when you do, He'll let you find Him.
So you were lukewarm.
I was in lukewarm land. Yes,
Okay.
terrible to say it, but I was.
And is this when you moved to Tennessee, or was that a little after? How did that happen?
No,
How did that come about?
I I moved to Tennessee. I was working with a company in Atlanta, and I got promoted into the corporate office, or as we called it, the ivory tower. So I moved from Atlanta, and we needed to get out of Atlanta because the school system there was really bad. And when we took Jake to the first day of middle school, there was a riot going on in the parking lot. There was all kinds of cops there, and we were just like, no, we're just going to homeschool. And we called the principal and said, we are not taking our son here. We're going to homeschool. And it was within a year that we left. God provided this out, and of course, in retrospect, I see very clearly the times when God opened or shut doors in front of me to encourage me to walk in a certain direction. But no, it came about because of my work. I got promoted with the company that I was with, and I got promoted into a sales position inside the corporate office in Knoxville, Tennessee.
And did
And it
it
allowed me to
concern
move
you
my whole
that
family.
you were moving away from a church that had the same beliefs, or away from your parents who could help with the kids, or was that just like not even a factor?
It it was a factor, but it was a lesser factor than that we needed to get the kids into a better school system.
I see.
And
Yeah.
and also it was a significant pay raise for me at the
Hmm.
same time, significant pay raise.
Yeah. I
So
think when I was
there
down
was a number
there,
of factors.
I think when I was down there, Clayton County, I don't know if that's the school district you guys were in, but
It
they
is.
had lost their accreditation. So
They
like kids
had
graduating from high school, their diploma didn't
didn't
have
count.
value, right?
Yeah, didn't count. Yeah,
So
and
yeah, I
not
mean
just
it
that. It was
was
just
a crazy time in that
it
part of
was
Georgia.
it was a crazy time. And again, in retrospect, you can see God opening and shutting doors.
Yeah.
Um, I didn't see it at the time because I was too caught up in the immediate drama of it all. And one of the things I've learned significantly over time is we have very limited perceptions as humans. We
Yes.
see where we're
We
standing, and
just
we
see like
see
right in front of our face, and that's it.
right here we see, and we see a little bit behind us, and then it kind of fades off into obscurity. We don't see the big picture. So a lot of times we lean into our own understanding pretty heavily, and it's just dumb. We just don't have the perception to understand. So trusting God is extremely critical.
Yeah.
Um, just whatever happens, it's like, hey, God's got this. You know,
All right. So in the next chapter of your life, you're in the Knoxville, Tennessee area, and you're
yep,
working, uh,
making making good money.
making good
I was
money.
doing quite well in my chosen vocation.
Now you had already
Uh,
started back with smoking marijuana and
yep.
drinking, so I'm assuming that continued. You also were into video games, right?
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Let's
Yes.
throw that
It
in
was
there too.
actually.
I mean, if you're gonna dopamine max, you want to hit the
Yeah. You might as
trifecta.
well max it out. You're right. You're right. No, we actually. I and a couple friends of mine. We got together and we made what was probably the most successful video game of its type. For decades. It was Aerolith. It was a module for Neverwinter Nights, the video game, and that was an extreme time sink because it's like a whole little simulated world that you can do all the simulated things that you could actually be doing in real life for actual productive value, but instead you do it in a video game with a bunch of nerds who also are getting no productive value out of it. But no, it was pretty popular at its time. It was an extreme huge time sink. I
Like, what
think
are we
we
talking about per week as far as how many hours would you be investing in this?
Oh, I would work for 40 hours and then I would put at least 40 hours into the game also. So
Wow,
I mean, sleep was at a premium. It just didn't happen very often. But
that's
we
incredible.
had like 30,000 unique users a month. Um, not 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 different characters on the game, different unique logins on the game.
Mhm.
So we were hopping pretty good. Um,
And was that monetized, or was it more just like a
no.
community you
It we
participated in?
Now see we there was a transition point where we could have monetized it, and in retrospect we should have because we'd be just rolling in buckets of money like Scrooge McDuck, but that's not that critical. But no, we made the decision not to monetize it, but we accepted donations, and even accepting donations, it still paid for all of our servers, all the bandwidth, all a little bit extra for us to go have developmental meetings, uh, which mainly consisted of going to hang out at the bar and drinking a few beers, and talking about what we should put in the game next. But
Mhm.
no, we did make a little bit of money off of it, but it was not monetized to the degree that it could have been,
Okay. So what
which
else
is
would
probably in
characterize this
retrospect good.
period of your life where you were gaming a lot? You were just were you going to church anymore since you had moved away? Like, how would you describe your faith during this period?
Weak at best. Honestly, the more distractions you put in front of your face, the more TV, the more video games, the more movies, the more just fantasy books and stuff like that. I was doing a really good job about keeping myself occupied and not focusing on the important stuff. I was distracting myself quite well. Um, I would say that this is probably one of the weakest points of my faith, which is really disturbing considering all the lengths that God had gone to keep me alive and to put me in a certain place and to give me some certain knowledge and information and spirit. So it was really just
Hmm.
bad behavior on my part. It was not being grateful at all.
And so this was something that went on. You were kind of like in this phase of life for years, right? Like, what are we
Years,
talking about
years,
here?
probably a decade or so.
Okay.
Um, and just, I was
And this
making
is
really
when you're
good
raising
money
your
and it,
kids. Your kids are becoming teenagers, and
yep.
they're moving out of
Yeah.
the house.
I
All this during that period.
Yes, yes. And sadly, I was so focused on myself and my video game at the time and my career and all these other things that I really feel in some ways that I failed as a father to instill in
Mm.
my children the level of importance that you need to associate with a good spiritual relationship with God. Um, and we've later circled back to that, but at the time, I think I missed an opportunity.
Wow. Okay, so what happened next?
Well, I went from the company that I was with to a different company. I started making even better money. Um, we ended up buying some land up here. We've got about 13 acres on a mountain, and so we were doing all right financially. But there's no, and we would go to a local church, a kind of a big mega church. But there's none of the churches around here are they're much more of a traditional belief. We have a couple different types of churches. We've got Baptists, we've got Southern Baptists, we've got fundamental Baptists. Um, so pretty much anything you want, as long as it's in this very specific slice of the pie.
Yeah.
And I did go to a church, and there's a couple non-denominationals, obviously, but
Well,
there's not a
non-denominational
church
churches
down
are
here.
often just Baptist churches in disguise, right? Like,
Right.
if you look
Very
at
much
the
so.
schools that the pastor and the staff went to, they're all Baptist schools. They just got rid of the Baptist
Exactly.
name so that they could appeal to
Yes.
more people.
Yes. Um, and that's fine, but I did find that my understanding of a lot of things was different than a lot of their understandings. But at the time, it didn't really bother me too bad because I was just going to check that box off. Remember, because I'd distracted myself so well. I
So, like, if
had
they
I had
talked
started.
about going to heaven or that Jesus is
Oh yeah,
God, you don't believe
yeah.
those
All the
things, but you were just like,
mm,
whatever, who cares?
right. I'm here. I'm at church. What's the big deal? Yeah. Um, and sadly, I mean, there is a small group of the way that's out here. And I've met with them a few times, and they're great folks. I love them a lot. They're probably the closest to my beliefs that are out here. But other than that, like on Saturdays and Sundays, it's very there's a very orthodox understanding,
Hmm.
which is ironic, um, considering that it's predominantly Protestant, but it's a very orthodox Protestant, you know.
Okay. So what happened next?
Well, um, COVID hit. I think everybody remembers COVID, and
2020. Yep.
yeah, I was working at a company, making very good money. We were working at home for the year, and they said, "Okay, everybody, it's time to come back to work." And I just said, "No, I don't think so. All my stuff's been paid for, and I'm good. I don't think I want to work for you guys anymore." So I turned in my notice, and in order to at the time I had moved from a casual pot smoker to extremely heavily smoking pot again.
What does that
Like
mean? What does it mean to be
uh
like, how many times a day are we talking?
oh, like all day every day.
Oh,
All day, like wake up, do a couple bongs, go do a couple things, and then within a couple hours go sit down and get myself back right, and then just keep going through that like that through the whole day. It was way too much. It was not a casual user at all.
and this is like
Um,
you were in your 50s at this point? Or 40s or
yes,
50s?
yes, late 40s, early 50s.
Okay.
So, yeah, I was buying it by the ounce at a time, which I don't, if you've ever used pot, you know, that's a pretty large amount. And I'd refresh that about every week or two at the most. Um, so after a while, when they said, let's everybody, we're going to come back from COVID, I was like, no, thank you. And I actually set up a grow room in the house and was growing my own crop. Um, and and that was actually also supplementing my income because I didn't have a job anymore, but I didn't really need that much money because all my house had been paid for, my car's been paid for. And so I just kind of fell back into it. The farther away you allow yourself to get from God, the stupider you get. Um,
Well,
and
what I'm
I'm
hearing
living
too
proof
is
of
that
that.
sin has a growth component to it. So you start with just a little bit.
Absolutely.
Oh, I'm just going to have some beers with my friends, and then you're smoking pot all day in the house and you don't have a job. Like obviously that's a
Exactly.
very
Exactly.
that's over many years, right? But there is this
Yes.
growth, and it's slow, and you don't notice it. But
Yeah.
when you look at like the bookends, you're like, wow, how did I get from here to there? Um,
Yeah. No, that's
yeah.
100% true. It's my dad always likes to say, 1 degree off will change your destination.
Hmm.
If you
Like
look
for a boat.
like at the church, yeah, like if you look at the church, if you go through 1700 years, if we're just 1 degree off, if you're traveling for 1700 miles and you're 1 degree off, at the end of your destination, you'll be about 100 miles from where you wanted to be.
Wow.
So if I was trying to get to New York City, I could be drowning in the ocean off to the right, or lost in the mountains of Albany, or lost in the mountains, or standing in Albany thinking I was in New York, but I
Yeah.
wouldn't be because
Yeah.
I'd be in
Yeah.
Albany. It's
Yeah.
all you're just not on base. You're off, and that's exactly what happened to me.
Hmm.
Um, and here's the kicker: God never left. Obviously, God.
Yeah.
And He was always reaching out to me. I think from the beginning of creation, God stood with His hands outstretched towards His asking for our return. Um, and I just wasn't listening because I was very good at distracting myself. Very
Yeah.
good at distracting myself. So on Valentine's Day, 2/14/2022, I died. I had I had a widowmaker heart attack. I was sitting in my living room, and I had some chest pains, and I was talking to my wife. I said, I don't really feel good right now. I think I might go to to the clinic. And I said, no, first I said, I think I'm going to take a nap. She's like, okay. And I laid down and I couldn't get comfortable. So I said, I just don't feel right. I might go to the clinic. She said, okay. So I started driving down towards the emergency clinic and I called my mom. And I think right then my heart attack started happening in earnest
Oh, wow.
because it was just
Well, and your
like
mom's a
a
nurse. We
fist.
should say that. So she would have a lot of
Yes,
medical
yes,
knowledge.
mom is the nurse. So I was telling her, I said, Mama, my chest is hurting really bad. I think I'm going to go to the clinic. And she said, do not go to the clinic. Go to the emergency room. They can't do anything at the clinic if you're having a heart attack. So I went to the emergency room and I kind of cut in front of a young lady and put my hand on the counter and said, excuse me, I think I'm having a heart attack. And she said, well, do you have your identification? And I had left it in the car, which was parked in the back 40 of the parking lot. I had to stagger through the parking lot, clutching my chest to get there.
Oh my
And
goodness.
I said, well, it's in my car, and I honestly don't think I can make it back there. I think I'm about to die. And she said, well, okay, what's your name? Just so we can bill you later, and let's get you in this room. And the lady put a bunch of electrodes on me, the EKG stuff. And she's like, okay, how you doing? You doing all right? And she's looking at the readings, and she's like, oh, okay. And she just casually sidled over to the phone and whispered into the phone a little bit. And the next thing I know, there's about 14 guys with the gurney, and they've got me strapped to the gurney, and they're force feeding me baby aspirin and running me to the back. And they put me immediately on a table. The doctor's there, Dr. Neil Berry. You can check with him. He's a super guy. He's a local cardiologist here in Knoxville. And he said, well, you're having an event. You might want to call your wife, And she didn't think it was a big deal at the time. I didn't really think it was a big deal at the time, even though I was like literally dying. So I'm laying on this table and I'm looking up at this giant TV screen that has my innards x-rayed on it, and I can see them. They're fishing a stent up through my chest. They went in through my upper right thigh.
Okay.
And the femoral artery, and they fished it all the way around to the top of my heart where the widowmaker is. That's the type of heart attack I had. And I had 100% blockage in the widowmaker. And so I can see this little thing fishing around and going towards my beating heart, in the x-ray thing or whatever it is that they're using. Very cool technology, by the way. And I hear them say, push the fentanyl. And then I was out. And I woke up, and there's about 16 people standing around me, very concerned looking, very worried looking on their faces. And there's a lady with the paddles with her eyes about as big as saucers standing in front of me. And doctor said, are you all right? And I said, yeah, are you all right? It's like, sir, you're a very lucky man. You died. You were dead on the table for about 5.5 minutes.
What?
Yeah, I was dead on the table for about 5.5 minutes. And in retrospect, that's what I would call a light tap on the shoulder from God saying, son,
It's time to make a change. Wow.
Right. So what I did instead,
5.5 minutes. Is it? I guess I was under the impression that like after a couple minutes you can't even bring somebody back.
that's apparently not the case. It's documented. Neil Berry has all the stuff. I've got the paperwork somewhere, but no, I was dead for about 5.5 minutes.
Wow.
And he said, you're a very lucky young man. In fact, it's been great. Later, I actually went to his office and talked to him and his staff. And he's like, man, you're my miracle baby. What's the difference? What's the change? And I got the opportunity to testify to him at that time about what God had done for me and why.
Wow.
But the thing, the really messed up thing, Sean, is when I got back up from the bed, I got back up and immediately kept being stupid. I had probably a $6,000 to $10,000 crop growing in my back room. I came home. I was home within about 2 days and sitting on my couch doing a bong. Just absolutely
just could
probably
not get
the
out of
dumbest
it.
kid.
Now, what were you thinking to yourself? Were you thinking, I really need to change, or you're thinking, well, I guess that's over now. I just go back to life as usual, or what?
That's exactly what I thought. I thought, well, that was close. Cool. Let's get back to it. And just,
Do you think you were trying to escape something with all that marijuana? Like, what were you trying to escape, you think? Because, like, you're just
I have no doubt.
not
I have no
thinking
doubt.
introspectively when you're high, right?
Right.
Maybe you
well,
are. I don't know.
Anything anything that distracts you from focusing on devoting yourself to and serving God, anything is a distraction. And for me, it was pot. Pot became my idol. Some people it's booze. Some people it's alcohol. Some people use cocaine or heroin or other things. Some people just use TV. Some people escape through TV or video games or movies or just fantasy realism. Anything that distracts you from God can do the same thing that happened to me. It can just pull you away into stupid land.
Yeah. I wonder, what was it about reality that was just like that you so needed to escape?
I don't know.
Okay.
That's a great introspective question. I couldn't tell you.
Yeah.
I had everything. I had everything. I
Yeah,
had
you
the
did. I
house. I
mean,
had
you
the
had the
land.
job, you had the house.
Yeah,
You even built your own house, right?
we did. We did. I'll send you a
And
picture of it.
you
It's a
had the
very, very nice
cars,
little house.
and the kids were healthy and
Kids
out of
were
the
grown and
house.
gone. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I
You
honestly
had the
think it's
American
because
dream.
yeah, and just like most of the Americans who are living the dream, I was just an ungrateful little prig. Just I narcissistic and ungrateful. All about me. It's all about me. And
Mm.
it's really not. It's really not. So,
Yeah.
and I continued to live that way for probably 2 more years.
Oh my goodness. After you died, for 2 more years, you were
After I
just
died, for 2 more years,
business as
just
usual.
business as usual, right?
So you
Growing
are what we
growing
might
weed in
call
the
a
back
slow
room.
processor. Take you a little while
Yeah.
to kind of think through,
uh,
okay, well,
only if you were being extremely benevolent would you call me a slow processor. But and honestly, you got to keep in mind, because of my background, I view myself through a certain lens, and um, it was not very it was not a very flattering lens because I remember with great clarity some of the horrible things that I've done.
mhm.
Um, so when I died, I'm just like, what are you gonna do? Got
Wow.
back up and kept being stupid. Um, then 2 years later, um, my dad went blind, and dad has always been just like this super faithful, super righteous guy, always toeing the line, never backing down, staunch defender of his faith, just an amazing guy. And we had a family call, and we usually don't have family calls unless there's some serious stuff going down,
Yeah.
So we had a family call, and he said, Jeremy, Jenny, I went blind. And I'm like, what are you talking about, Dad? That's crazy talk. And he's like, no, I went blind and I can't see. And he's like, and Jeremy, I'm calling you because I had this weird vision after I went blind. I'm like, okay. And I've keep in mind, I still believed in God, kind of like over here. Didn't think that any God would want anything to do with me because I'm such a terrible human being, even though he saved me repeatedly. Um, but this is dad, and dad is a whole nother slice of cake. He's a whole different
Well,
thing.
he's
He's
very
been
committed. I mean, you're both your parents have really poured out their lives to serve God and His people for decade after
absolutely,
decade. I mean, how much more could especially your dad, have made working in construction or in business or something?
absolutely
Than yeah.
anything. He's
Instead, he
brilliant.
just poured himself out, getting paid almost nothing.
Yeah,
Travel all
and
over
what he does get
Africa.
paid.
What's that?
Yeah, they've been to Africa for like 30 years. Everything they do get paid, they funnel over to the churches in Africa. I don't want to toot their horn too heavily, but they're good people. They're really good people.
Yeah.
And I knew this, and I always kind of held my dad kind of a little bit on a pedestal because of this. I know his spirit, so I have a lot of respect and love for him. And so when he went blind, it hit me harder than my own death did.
That's
Just
incredible.
to cut it short.
So what was the vision he said he had?
Oh, well, that's interesting. First off, I guess I should explain I have terrible handwriting. He had me as a student in college, so he knew exactly how bad my handwriting was. All the kids would joke that I was practicing to be a doctor because of my chicken scratch scrawl. Um, And he said, I was laying in bed and I couldn't, I'm blind. I can't see anything. And I saw a light on the wall and I saw a hand come out and was writing on the wall.
Oh.
I said, okay, meeny, meeny, tickle you farson. I mean, what are we talking here? And he said, no, it was in your handwriting, though. I knew it was your handwriting because I had to focus on it for a second to read it because it was so terrible. and and he said the vision that he saw, the writing was, the kingdom is ready, gather them in, gather them in. It's like, it was really weird that it was in your handwriting. And so this is about a 30-minute phone conversation, with the whole family, and it's like a gut punch. It's like a gut punch. Worse than, I mean, a thousand times worse for me emotionally than when I died. So, because I mean, keep in mind, I was a bad kid, but Dad was always good. He was one of the good guys. So I got on my knees. I started praying, and I started fasting. And I did a hard fast, like nothing, no water, no nothing. And I did that for a few days. And I think it was about day 3. And I'm praying, just gut level, broken heart, on my hands, knees, and face in the dirt, praying to God to heal my dad. And about day 3, I realized, and I'm also starting to read my Bible again, looking for answers, because this isn't computing with me, because this is a faithful servant. So about day 3, I realized, into my fast, I realized, hey, God's not going to listen to the prayers of an unrighteous man. I'm thinking in my head, when I first got down on my face and started praying to God, I'm thinking, well, I just got to pray for Dad till he's healed, and I can, just go back to my normal lifestyle and do this. And I realized, hey, God's not going to listen to the prayers of an unrighteous man.
And you knew you were living unrighteously at that time.
I knew that I was living unrighteously at that time. So I went into my grow room. I pulled out all my plants. I took them out to the fire pit, and I poured diesel on them and sacrificed them in an altar before the Lord.
And how much money would that be worth if you sold it?
Oh, it's probably 6 to 12 grand worth of product. They were all about to bud, and they were about 6 feet high already. They were already budding, so it was probably going to be a very good crop. But I burned it all in a fire. That's just money stuff. Money's irrelevant. So I burned it all up. I started focusing on obeying God and listening to God, 100% seeking God with my whole heart, praying, fasting, trying to do all the things that I could do to intercede with God on Dad's behalf. And and stuff started to get weird, because I was praying to God, and then I started seeing things. I started witnessing miracles. I started having dreams. It was just weird. And I don't want to get too deep into it, but I will say, if you seek God with your whole heart, He'll let you find Him.
Must have been such an incredible time, because I think really, I used the term dopamine maxing before, which is a term my kids use to talk about, when you're doing multiple things at the same time to just basically experience pleasure. And you were so optimized for, you have the video games, you have the marijuana, other things I'm sure we could add into that, like sugars, dessert, other
TV, books, food stuff, everything that I could use to distract myself.
So like you had really become proficient at maximizing the pleasure you experience on a daily basis. And now you're doing the exact opposite. You're cutting out all food. You're cutting out the marijuana. You're cutting out the drinking, and you're even cut out water for a few days. So you're just like a pendulum that has swung completely the other way. I'm just saying, like, physiologically, your body must have been dying in the sense of like withdrawal during that period. Must have been really hard.
It, if it was, I didn't notice it because I was so focused and intent.
That's incredible. That's incredible.
So, so this has been my dad's been blind now for about 2 years, just a little over 2 years, and it's been a very weird journey. Um, for the longest time, I cut out every external source that was distracting me. Like I didn't watch TV for over a year and a half. In fact, I have to say thank you because your podcast helped me to get some form of external entertainment that was also edifying. I think I've listened to every one of your podcasts. I went through all your stuff.
So that's over
Very
600 episodes at this point. So
over 600 episodes,
congratulations on
which
that.
which lets you know how much TV I wasn't watching at the time. So, but no, it was extremely beneficial. I I I was on a hard fast for a couple weeks, and I started drinking water after I think about the fourth day. But
Yeah.
I was still on a hard fast for at least a couple weeks, maybe longer. I don't know. It's not a big deal. And then when I was coming off that, I said, you know what? I'm until Dad's healed. I'm gonna do the Daniel fast. So I talked to Dad and I said, hey, look, I'm gonna do this until you're healed. Do you think that's okay? He's like, you're doing it for the right reasons, son. You're not trying to seek aggrandizement for yourself or anything. So
Mhm.
it's like, yeah. So
So
as of
explain that a
today,
little bit. What does that mean? You're not eating, or you are?
I don't drink. Well, let me back up. I don't eat any kind of meat right now. I eat fish. I'm a pescatarian, I guess technically. But I haven't eaten meat in over 2 years, and it's clearly not affected me too negatively because I still am quite a hefty young lad. But I haven't had a drop of alcohol. I cut out alcohol like cold turkey. Haven't smoking obviously is out. It's all that stuff is done with. And I just when I came off the fast, it was easier to go to transition into a Daniel fast where you just didn't eat the king's meat and stuff like that or drink the king's wine. It was easier than that, easier to go into a Daniel fast than it was for me to just go like, oh, let's just go back and eat a steak. So I don't think this is necessary for salvation, and I'm not saying you should all limit your intake to vegetables only but this is the deal that I made with God, and I'm sticking to it.
Yeah. So during this last 2 years, what are other things that you have been doing? Like you've talked a lot about what you aren't doing anymore. You're not eating meat.
Mm,
You're not smoking weed. You're not drinking. Okay, so what are you doing? Like, did you go back to work? What? How do you
that's
fill
a
your
great
time?
question. That's actually a great question. Initially, because I had semi-retired, basically quit. Um, and initially, I would just read scripture and pray. I think it's very critical if you're not going to get, you're going to have habits one way or the other. So I think it's very critical to establish holy habits within yourself. So I set my alarm on my phone just 3 times a day. When I wake up, I get on my face. I don't just say, "Oh God, thanks for the food." I get on my hands and knees and put my face in the dirt and talk to God. Gut level, hey, this is what's going on. Thank you so much for this. What can I do for you today? And I set my alarm on my phone 3 times a day. I do that morning, noon, evening. Um, and that's just it's not the ritual that is important. It's establishing the habit of holiness. Um, I I try to uh, I I've since come up with a saying. I said, if you're looking for Jesus, he's probably in a Walmart parking lot and he's probably hungry. Go buy the guy a hamburger. I've tried to fill my time up with doing good deeds. And that's not because good deeds is what gets you there, but that's because as a Christian, when God saved you, he saved you so that you could do these good deeds that he's prepared in advance for you to do. So I've been trying to do that. I did re-enter the work field, but I thought, money's great, but that's not where my focus is.
Mm.
So for a year, I worked as a caretaker for a quadriplegic fellow, super nice guy. Um, and that's very humbling in and of itself, I can tell you. And then after that, I started working at the local elementary school with kindergarten kids in the with the special needs. I work
Okay.
with the special ed kid, and that's a hoot, and that keeps you young and fit and active, um, and also humble because look, God has given us so much that we just take for granted.
And I'm sure with those kids, they're not shy about saying their opinion. I mean, kids in
No,
general just like blurt out whatever they think, but especially if you have special needs, like there's no filter at all.
absolutely no filter. No, the guys that can talk have no filter.
Yeah.
Uh, no, and I've really enjoyed it, and I love the kids. It's been very enjoyable. But I if I can help widows or orphans, if I can help a homeless guy, if I can stop and give a guy a ride, I actively seek daily what I can do to honor God because God has been so good to me. And my dad is still blind, but you know
Yeah.
what? There's been there's been doors opened because of that affliction that would normally not have been opened. And I know that God is working through these things and he's serving his own purpose. And whatever it will be to the good of those who love him.
Yeah. Yeah. So you would you say that God really wanted to activate you in doing what you're doing now? Because, like I don't want to say God gave you a heart attack. Not that he couldn't, but that just seems like probably the consequence of your lifestyle, right? Um, but
Yeah.
this, and I don't want to accuse God of causing Dr. Joe to go blind, right? Because that's probably genetic or whatever. Because he was already blind in the other eye, and
Yes.
your mom was deaf in one ear. And the joke was that between the two of them, they
Yeah.
got they could
It
see
made a
and
whole person.
hear.
Right, right.
But so like I guess my question is like as you kind of reflect while we're having this conversation on like what it is God wants from you, like how do you put it all together?
I think it's very it's a very simple thing for me. And it's not just for me, this is for all of us. And I think it's especially poignant because I was such a bad kid that it's very meaningful for me that God, the creator and ruler of all things, took the time out to personally pull me back.
Yeah.
I really think that just
That's
from the
huge.
beginning of, dude, you have no idea how
That's
huge it
so
is. It's
huge that
humbling.
he would care enough to act and to
It
recruit
makes me
you
cry when I think
to
about it.
seek you out. Yeah.
And particularly because I was just such a bad guy. I was not a good kid at all, and yet he still, I think, from the beginning of creation, he has stood just outside of the garden with his hands outstretched towards his creation, going, "Guys, come on, I love you. I created you for a purpose. Come on back home."
Mhm.
And I think that's when I stand and look back along the whole path of my journey, the thing that stands out to me besides my own stupidity, which is pretty prominent, the thing that stands out to me is that God, in spite of everything, has been faithful, loving, and just waiting, calling me back the whole time. And it's it's humbling. A lot of people don't realize how humbling that should be. That the creator, ruler, and master of everything knows your name.
Wow. Yeah. Um, what was the response of your wife and your kids when you went into like prophet mode 2 years ago? Like,
Prophet
were they
mode.
like, man, what's Jeremy into now? I'm sure this will pass. Or what were they saying to you? Do you know what they thought?
Yes, I actually have no misunderstanding because it became a it became a point of contention initially with my wife.
I would think so. I mean, this is
Um,
a drastic change.
Immediate drastic change, and I just said, "Look, this is what's going on. This is why I have failed in these manners. Um, this is what I'm doing." And she's like, "Okay," and she's been behind me 100%. She's like, "You understand if we can be on the same journey but in different places along the path." And I said, I am not I am neither a master of the law nor a teacher of the law. I am a bad kid who God has redeemed. I am in no position to cast stones. I live in a glass house. There's no way that I can be judgmental about anybody else because God in his infinite mercy has chosen to save me, does not make me better than anybody else. So this has no offense, but this has nothing to do with you
Right.
unless you want to come along with me. And she's been very supportive. And I've
Now, does she still
over oh
eat meat and do the other stuff,
oh
or is
yeah,
she okay? So you're kind of just on your own in this
yeah,
these restrictions. Okay.
yeah, and that's fine. This is again this does not equate to righteousness. You
Yeah.
know, anything that I do does not equate to righteousness. Anything that I do, hopefully, is symptomatic of my faith, belief, and trust in the love of the God who made me. And nothing that I do is in and of itself to be counted as righteousness. This is just we're all little blind cave fish swimming in the dark trying to find God. And
Mm,
I'm doing the best that I can, just like you're doing the best that you can.
yeah.
Um,
What about the
but she's
kids? What
been
do they
very good.
say?
The kids, they don't really live with us anymore, so it's not as impactful to them as it was my wife. But both the kids have been very supportive. Josh and Jake have just been like, "Hey, I respect that." Jacob has actually reached out and asked for guidance in Bible studies.
Okay.
So um, it's I think I don't honestly see a downside to it.
Hmm. What's next for you? Do you know?
Oh, no, I don't know, but I've never known. The difference is I'm not trying to plan it either. I'm just kind of I'm trying to be faithful. I'm trying to be obedient. I'm trying to keep my heart focused on the right things and not be distracted because it's so just down here. It's so easy to get distracted. Um, so I'm doing everything that I can to focus on doing the right things at the right times and in the right mindset.
Hmm.
And I've noticed, and without getting too deep into it, some of the crazy miracles that I've seen, and not like, oh, that's a miracle that you made it. No, no, I'm talking about, oh, like the Dead Sea parted and we all walked through type miracles. I've seen some crazy, crazy stuff, man, since I've 100% focused. Um, I don't know what's next, but it doesn't matter because I'm not the head, I'm the tail. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Well, it seems like your life is about serving now. And before it was about serving yourself and
Yeah,
about kind of like crafting a daily experience that just maximizes pleasure. Whereas now it's like, okay, well, I want to please God and I
yeah,
want to serve the least of these. So, special needs kids in an elementary school, down and outers in a Walmart parking lot, those are my people. That's where you want to spend your time
yeah.
serving. So it seems like that already is your purpose. You found your purpose. Um, and what's incredible is that you can do it with joy, and you can do it with a sense of gratitude rather than trying to earn God's favor or validate yourself. You've already been saved, and now you're just responding back to that with um, with acts of gratitude. Would you say that that's the way you look at it, or how would you say it?
Very, very accurate summary. Um, and here's the thing, nothing scares me. I've already died. You can't, I mean, you want to kill me again? Knock yourself out. I've already been dead. I've been there. There's nothing that scares me. So I'm essentially fearless. And it that does cause some contention with my wife because I'll stop and give anybody a ride. Hey, buddy, you need a ride? Hop in. Let's go. She's like, you don't even know that guy. He's gonna murder you. No, he won't. And if he does, cool. I've already been dead. It doesn't scare me.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh, you know,
yeah. That is funny. It's almost like you have been kind of crafted as a tool of God to reach people that other people wouldn't be willing to reach, or that they would be intimidated by. I mean, considering like your incredible life of, as you put it, depravity and crime
mhm.
early on, but then also later, like you've just seen a lot. You've tasted, you've drunk from the cup of sin down to the dregs. You know what every last gulp tastes like, right? So that, in a sense,
Sadly,
that qualifies you to speak to somebody that's a drug addict. That qualifies you to speak to somebody who is in crime or whatever, because you could say, "Look, I've been there. I know what you're
yeah.
going through." Do you find that you can
It
like relate to people better and therefore be more effective?
absolutely, absolutely. It's kind of weird because I'm the guy that can walk into any environment and be totally comfortable. I can go into a homeless camp outside of Walmart and just start talking to the guys. I go into my doctor's office, the doctor who put the stent in my heart and brought me back from the dead, with God's help. And he's actually a very spiritual guy too. We've had a great conversation with him and his office staff. I'm the guy that can sit down and order food, and when the waitress will be like, "How's your day?" Well, let me tell you, honey, my day is fantastic. You know why? And sit there and have a 20-minute conversation with her. I'm not scared of any environment just because of some of the stuff that I've been through, and I'm just grateful. I'm grateful that I'm alive. I'm hugely humbled by the favor, the unwarranted favor that God has shown me and my family. Um, and I'm just, nothing that I can ever do will be enough to repay that. Nothing that I can ever do, but I'm going to try.
Would you say that you're an evangelist, or that
I would say,
you have the gift
I
of
would say that
evangelism, or I don't know how you would say that, but what do you?
I would say that every living being who is purporting to be saved is an evangelist or should be. Um, so yes. Now, will I ever accept money for that? No, no. You give that to people who need it. I'm fine. But I think we're all called to be not only. I think more of an evangelist. I think I'm a witness. Let me tell you what happened to me.
Yeah.
You can express that and digest it in your own life terms, and get the nuggets that you want for nutrition out of it. But let me tell you what's happened to me. Let me tell you what God has done for me. And if that's an evangelist, sure, I'm an evangelist. I won't ever take money for it though.
And how have your parents reacted to your life change?
uh, Overwhelming joy.
Yeah, they've been praying for you for
I
a long time.
They have been praying for me for a long time, and my dad and I have had some very deep conversations. He's like, you know what? If me being blind was the cost of your salvation, I'm happy to pay it.
Wow.
And we've actually sat down and we've come up with 42 positive outcomes that would not have come had he still been sighted.
Huh.
And even though I know it's a terrible burden for him to go through right now, we don't understand. We see in a very limited, we have a very limited perception of all the circles in the pond that the stone that's thrown
Hmm.
causes. So, I mean, who's to say? Not me, but I know that God does have a plan, and it's much better than my plan because He sees better than I do.
Yeah. Very good. Well, anything else you would like to say, or that we should cover, or that people can learn more about you somewhere? Do you have like
Yeah.
a website or anything?
No, I'm not. I'm not that egocentric. I have been writing. Recently, Marcia Railton has reached out to me at the beginning of this year, and I've been writing for her website, theseekgrowlove.com. And I think I've got about 40 devotionals written on there, and I've got
Oh,
just
yeah, right
because
on the
I'm human.
homepage, seekgrowlove.com, devotion by
Yeah.
Jeremy Martin.
Oh yeah, today's one of them that I did, but I think I've got about 40 up there now from this
So this is
year,
kind of
and
like
it's
your
just
output where you're able to write up your thoughts and share what you're learning in the Bible.
yeah, yeah.
Cool.
So it's the website itself is basically a read your Bible in a year type website, and different people all through the states. Andy Cisneros, who we talked about, has done a few. I know his wife Christy's done a few. Bunch of really good people that are better than I am have done a bunch of them. So it's been very enjoyable. But this is also a good way for me to put my thoughts on paper and just get them out there. And there's not a lot of churches in my local area that believe the exact same that I do doctrinally, which what that's between them and God. Um, but it has been helpful to have a conversation with guys and be like, "Hey, look, check out this. I wrote this," and they're like, "Oh, so why do you believe this way?" And I said, "Well, this is what I think it says in Scripture because of this, this, and this. What do you believe? Let's talk about it." And then, more importantly than what you believe is how does that affect your actions towards your fellow creation,
Right.
And your Creator.
Awesome. Anything else you'd like to share?
No, I have to tell you how much I feel honored to be on here because there's been a lot of my role models on here, including yourself, sir. Your podcast really helped save me from falling back into an entertainment dopamine uh,
Frenzy.
replacement. Yeah, yeah. Well, I think it's natural for a little bit to distract ourselves, but you got to remember, I'm the professional of distracting myself to the upteenth degree. So
Right.
it was very good to have both edifying and educational content that I could fill
Yeah.
myself with as I got to the point that I needed to be.
Well, I'm so glad to hear that it was helpful in that way. That's that's not a use I was necessarily thinking of when I got started. It's like, but whatever we do, whether it's writing articles for Seek Grow Love or putting out podcasts, God is able to use that how He wants to use it.
Absolutely.
With the people that
Absolutely. That's what it's
He's
all
working
about.
with. So that's very cool. Thank you so much for sharing that and for talking with me today.
I've been honored and blessed. And you know what? If my stupidity can cause some intelligence in some other people, I'm happy to throw it all out there.
Well, that brings this interview to a close. What did you think? Come on over to Restitutio and find episode 666. Wow. I didn't plan that, but poor Jeremy got the 666 episode of this podcast. Well, I think he would be okay with that. Recognizing that he himself was living an anti-Christian lifestyle for some time, but that God delivered him and that now he is on a new path and that he has been redeemed from that lifestyle. So anyhow, if you have any questions or comments for him, it would be great to hear them on this episode at restitutio.org. Now, on last week's episode 665, Why I'm Starting a Church in Texas with Alex Tyser, Andy wrote in saying, Sean, thank you for all your hard work on the show. I have really appreciated it a lot over the years. Generally, you are pretty even-handed, but I think you treated the JWs a bit unfairly at the end of this episode in talking about Michael the Archangel. I didn't think JWs were unthinking enough to pin a huge theology on a single verse like you made it sound. So I took a few seconds with an AI chatbot and discovered that they don't. There are other scriptures they point at. I was not surprised to see a reference to the description in Daniel that calls Michael, who is like El, the prince over Israel. I am not a JW, nor have I ever been one, nor do I recall ever having discussed theology with one, but I myself have wondered about Michael being the prince over Israel. And the first time I heard that JWs teach Jesus is Michael, I thought to myself, I bet they tie that into Daniel 10. If you are going to answer a question and start out by saying, I really don't know much about this, that's a good sign that you pause and do a little more research before you strawman your opponent. If we're going to respectfully dialogue with others, it starts with the assumption that controversial beliefs don't go completely untested, and usually that means arguments get developed beyond prima facie, even those arguments that turn out in the end to be weak or full of logical fallacies. Well, Andy, let me just respond to you in a brief manner here. First of all, thanks for writing in. Thanks for engaging. And thanks for adding a bit of data to the Jehovah's Witnesses' case for Michael the Archangel. Honestly, I don't get how or why, based on what you said, that this description of Michael as an archangel in Daniel 10 has anything to do with him being Jesus. So maybe that is just something that I missed, and that's my mistake, but I don't see it. Because he's the Prince of Israel, he's Jesus? Yeah, I'm not seeing it. So would love to hear more about that theory. I did want to just clarify that you're right. When I engage with comments and feedback at the end of each of these episodes each week, I'm not doing much research. That's entirely true. Maybe I should make a strong distinction. The things that I say during an episode itself and the actual content of the episode, I do research. I do my best to fact check things and make sure they're completely accurate. When I am answering people at the end of the episode, I'm just responding off the cuff. I simply do not have time to research thoroughly responses to all of the different comments that come in. So I appreciate the correction. You're right. I probably did not adequately represent the Jehovah's Witnesses and their reasons for calling Jesus Michael the Archangel. So, Andy, just at your suggestion, I typed into AI what are the reasons why the JWs believe Jesus is Michael the Archangel. Reason number one given is 1 Thessalonians 4:16, which was the reason that I mentioned in the episode last week, that they assume that because when Jesus comes with the voice of the archangel, that means Jesus is an archangel. That's not what the verse says. That's their interpretation of it. That's their assumption of it. It could just as well be that Jesus comes and Michael the archangel comes at the same time, or that there are other archangels other than Michael that are not mentioned in Scripture, but the Scripture also doesn't say that Michael's the only archangel, right? So I think there's just several assumptions here. In Jude 9, Michael is explicitly called an archangel. Well, that's the second Scripture given. To me, that's not an argument that Jesus is Michael. Daniel 12:1, Michael stands up during a climactic time of trouble. And the idea is that Jehovah's Witnesses are connecting that to the end times role when Christ returns during a time of trouble. Okay, well, it could be that Jesus is Michael or that Jesus and Michael are working together. Then we have Revelation 12:7-9. Michael and his angels fight Satan and cast him from heaven. Jesus also defeats Satan. Yeah, well, that's, again, not sufficient to establish identity. I eat chicken, Frank eats chicken, therefore Sean is Frank. Come on, that's not a logical reason to equate the two just because we're doing the same thing. Matthew 24:30-31, Jesus sends out his angels at his coming. Michael also commands angels. I think these are just incredibly weak scriptures that are laden with assumptions. Actually, I gave the strongest verse, but Andy, I think your point is still sustained that they are going to have multiple verses for any doctrine, just like all Christians are going to have probably multiple verses for any doctrine, and also have some sort of logic with it. My purpose in responding to the fellow from Brazil was not to give a thorough refutation of Jehovah's Witnesses' doctrines. It was just simply to point out what were the doctrines that for me were red flags. And so I mentioned Jesus being Michael the Archangel. I mentioned the blood transfusion And I mentioned a couple others, and then the greater concern of the high control stories that I hear from ex-Jehovah's Witnesses. I totally hear your point, but I think my ramblings at the end of these episodes do still have a role to play, even if they're not at the same level of research as the content of the major episodes. But yes, thanks for that corrective. Appreciate you listening and taking the time to write in. Incidentally, somebody else wrote in because I had an error in the audio file from last week where I actually missed out. Somehow I deleted the voicemail that he left, the Brazilian fellow left. And so thanks to Paul Muscle, who messaged me and told me about that. We got that all squared away so that people who listen to it subsequently do hear it. Well, that's going to be it for this week. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. If you'd like to support us, you can do that at restitutio.org. And so appreciate those of you who are supporting this ministry. I'll catch you next week. And remember, the truth has nothing to fear.